On Sunday mornings, the congregation gathered at Midland Baptist Church. They filled the pews, their voices rising in hymns that echoed off stained glass windows. And at the center of it all stood a man of authority, Scott Hort. To the faithful, he was a respected figure. A Navy veteran. A father. A deacon. A man trusted with guiding souls and shaping young lives. Parents allowed their children to attend the Bible school he directed. Youths followed his teaching. Fellow believers welcomed him into their homes. His words were laced with scripture, his presence marked by reverence. But trust, once given, can become the very weapon that destroys. Because inside the walls of his own home, behind closed doors where prayers were once whispered, something else was happening. A story was unfolding that no sermon could justify. A story that left his own children carrying scars that would not heal. In the years between 2005 and 2018, 2 daughters of Scott Hort lived in fear of the man the community praised. They would later tell investigators how moments meant to be ordinary, like an afternoon nap, became memories too painful to revisit. They would describe a pattern, not of fatherly love, but of control, coercion, and abuse. For years, silence reigned. To neighbors, nothing appeared unusual. To churchgoers, he was simply a man of God. Yet behind this public image, accusations of molestation and exploitation waited, like a shadow no one dared confront. Until, finally, his daughters stepped forward. Their voices changed everything. Their courage shattered the illusion. And when the allegations reached law enforcement, the truth began to surface, slowly at first, then like a flood that could not be stopped. On the 16th of July, 2024, officers from the Michigan State Police placed Scott Hort in handcuffs. His arrest sent shockwaves through the community. A church leader accused of turning his own household into a prison. A man revered as a teacher of faith, now facing charges of sexual conduct so grave, the bond set against him reached $1 million. This was not the story his congregation expected to hear. But it was the story his victims had carried for more than a decade. A story that would unfold in courtrooms, in testimonies, and in letters both of condemnation and support. A story that revealed the real hell inside a pastor's family. In 2023, the first stone of truth was cast into still water. 2 of Scott Hort's own daughters took a step that would undo years of silence. They reported their father to authorities. The Michigan State Police opened an investigation. What began behind closed doors was now exposed under the harsh light of law enforcement scrutiny. Scott Hort, by this time a longtime associate pastor at Midland Baptist Church and former deacon at Coleman's Grace Baptist Church, had been a pillar in his religious community, leading youth summer Bible school and preaching trust and devotion. But investigators say that between 2005 and 2018, he used his positions, as a parent, a husband, a man of God, to manipulate and control his children. 2 daughters testified that he ordered them to nap beside him. Moments that most would consider innocent became opportunities for betrayal. On the 16th of July, 2024, a single act of accountability reverberated through the community. Scott Hort was arrested by Michigan State Police and held on a $1 million bond, an amount that underscored the severity of the accusations. The arrest dismantled the image the community held of him, a caring leader now facing accusations of unimaginable abuse. Days later, at his arraignment on the 18th of July, 2024, he appeared via Zoom in a wheelchair. Hort faced 10 felony counts, 1 of first-degree criminal sexual conduct involving a minor relative, and 9 counts of second-degree offense, involving both minors under 13 and familial relations. Magistrate Gerald Ladwig, addressing the court, remarked, "What was hidden before has come to light. It was a moment of collapse, the staircase of protection crumbling under the weight of evidence." Through his court-appointed attorney, Hort pleaded not guilty. He remained in custody, isolated behind bars and stripped of the authority he once wielded. The trust of a congregation, the innocence of children, both stripped away by the allegations now catalogued in courtrooms. By early 2025, the legal path ahead for Scott Hort was clear, and irreversible. Prosecutors extended a plea offer that would have altered everything. But Hort chose a different route. On the 27th of February, 2025, he rejected a deal that would have spared him the glare of a courtroom. Instead of pleading guilty to just 2 counts of second-degree criminal sexual conduct and serving roughly 4 years, he opted to face a jury. All other charges, ones that carried far greater consequences, were dismissed from the offer. But he said no. The risk was immense. Conviction on a first-degree CSC count alone could have meant life behind bars under Michigan law. But Hort would have none of it. In court, his attorney moved to delay the trial. He sought medical records, claiming a health-related defense might emerge. The judge refused the delay. A date was set, the 17th of March, 2025, face-to-face with jurors. 8 months earlier, on the 16th of July, 2024, Hort had been arrested. Held on a $1 million bond, he appeared via Zoom in court, confined to a wheelchair. The weight of the allegations was now fully visible, and the countdown to trial inevitable. As the courthouse doors closed, the world watched. A man once respected, now standing accused, choosing the harshest path. A gamble that now tethered him to his fate. When the 17th of March, 2025, arrived, Scott Hort stood before a jury in Midland County's 42nd Circuit Court. 8 months had passed since his arrest. 8 months of silence, fear, and judgment hanging in the balance. The trial lasted just 2.5 days. Jurors heard accounts of more than a decade of alleged abuse, from 2005 to 2018, as investigators presented evidence grounded in testimony from his own children and ex-wife. The prosecution drew a stark contrast between Hort's public facade, a faithful pastor, a respected leader, and this hidden reality, insisting he used his religious authority to manipulate and control his family. When the verdict came, it was unequivocal. Convicted on 9 felony counts, 1 count of first-degree criminal sexual conduct and 8 counts of second-degree, Hort's fate was sealed. Following the jury's verdict, the weight of potential punishment loomed large. Under Michigan law, a first-degree CSC conviction could carry a life sentence, but the judge held discretion. On the 5th of June, 2025, Judge Stephen Karras delivered the sentence, 11 to 25 years in prison for the first-degree charge, with concurrent terms of 4-15 years for the second-degree charges. Ultimately, Hort faced a maximum of 25 years behind the bars. The court also ordered lifetime consequences. Hort will register as a sex offender and remain under electronic GPS monitoring upon his release. His pre-trial custody, 324 days, was credited toward his sentence. Judge Karras did not hold back. He condemned Hort's actions as classic grooming behavior, noting how he had dismantled his wife's authority, isolating the victims. He added, "You molested your daughters, you treated those girls like possessions." The community's response rippled far beyond the courtroom. Some submitted letters of support on Hort's behalf, while many others rallied behind the victims, choosing empathy over denial. Prosecutor Ati Duzo stood firm. Hort had used religion and his paternal role as tools to subjugate his family, stealing their innocence and safety in the process. Even after sentencing, Scott Hort maintained his innocence. But for a community once united by faith, the trust had been irrevocably broken. Scott Hort's case stands as a grim reminder: faith and power, when unchecked, can become instruments of betrayal. A man entrusted with spiritual guidance abused his most sacred duty, protecting his own children, under the guise of holiness. Justice came, but generations would bear the echo. Let this story serve as a warning. Blind trust in authority, especially in sacred spaces, can leave victims voiceless, if we don't listen. It took courage to speak out. May that courage always be noticed, always be championed. Court records revealed that the abuse stretched back nearly 13 years, from 2005 to 2018. For so long, the secrets lived inside the walls of one family home, masked by sermons, hymns, and Sunday prayers. Investigators testified that Hort had systematically broken down barriers, dismissing his wife's authority, isolating the children, and making them believe obedience was godly. What shocked many was how long it took before the truth surfaced. For over a decade, whispers of unease never made it outside the home. It was only when the courage of the victims finally met the ear of law enforcement that the silence shattered. During the sentencing hearing, the courtroom fell silent as victim impact statements were read. Words that had been buried in fear for years were finally spoken aloud. One daughter recounted nights of confusion and fear. Another described the loss of innocence, the sense that her own father had stolen the foundation of her childhood. Their mother spoke of years of being silenced, disempowered, and dismissed. Judge Keras, visibly moved, turned toward Hort and said, "Your daughters will carry this for the rest of their lives. And that is the greatest tragedy of all." Those voices, once suppressed by control, echoed across the courtroom, making clear that justice was about more than punishment. It was about recognition, acknowledgement, and the chance to heal. In the aftermath of the trial, the church community struggled with the shadow cast over its leadership. Some questioned how a man entrusted with guiding souls could commit acts so destructive behind closed doors. For the victims, the journey forward is long. Healing is not measured in prison years served, but in the ability to rebuild lives once shattered. They now carry scars, but also a strength forged in survival. For Scott Hort, the reality is stark. Once a leader of faith, he will spend his middle years confined behind bars, marked forever by the label of his crimes. This is the real hell that unfolded in a pastor's family. A home that should have been a sanctuary became a prison of silence and abuse. It took years, but the truth did emerge. And with it came justice, however delayed. Stories like this remind us that appearances can deceive, that power can corrupt, and that sometimes, the most trusted figures can become the most dangerous. If you've been affected by abuse, know this: silence does not have to be the end of your story. Speak. Reach out. There are those who will listen. This is Unforgiven Crimes. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay aware, and never stop seeking truth. You've just watched another story here on Unforgiven Crimes, where the darkest truths are brought into the light. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts below. Your support helps us uncover more stories that must never be forgotten. This is Unforgiven Crimes, where justice speaks, and silence is never an option.